Hello and welcome to the Story Engine podcast. My name is Kyle Gray, and today on the show we have Paul Hoffman. Paul Hoffman is a master creator of jingles and music, and we're going to talk about how his early days as a musician translated into becoming a leader and helping people sculpt their lives, building out the details of their lives day by day to create and live an epic life. We're going to learn his story on how he got started on this journey today. So without any further ado, let's hand it over to Paul. Paul Hoffman, welcome to the Story Engine podcast.
Thank you so much, Kyle. Listen, man, I'm so honored to be here and being part of this incredible thing that you have here that we've been talking about for some time. Of course, we're in a mastermind together, and you are you're a light up every day in the mastermind, and you're a light every day in what you do. And so I appreciate the opportunity to come on. So I'll tell you a little bit about who I am. Obviously, my name is Paul Hoffman, and I've been living in Marina Del Rey now for close to 20 years. From New York originally, and my dedication and service to the planet is through my platform called Sculpting Your Life, which is all about being able to understand that each and every one of us is a masterpiece. We're already a masterpiece. The metaphor for sculpting your life is, when Michelangelo saw this great block of granite that was cracked and flawed and discolored, nobody wanted it, cracked, flawed, and discolored, just like human beings are. But, Michelangelo saw something, man. He saw David. And all he did was take everything out of the way, and there's David. So sculpting your life is all about getting people to understand that everything in your life is a direct result of some thought, belief, behavior, and choice you make about you, because you create your reality. And then once you understand that the biggest obstacle to you being able to do that is you, because we're all very good at getting in our own way, then you get to sculpt the masterpiece known as you. So that's my jam. That's what I'm very, very passionate about, and I do it through music and brain technology and programs and tools and tactics and strategies and the whole nine yards. And one of the things that I like to do, Kyle, and I think you probably know this about me, and we can talk a little bit more about it. I'm very, very, very much about creating my own noise because there's so much noise out there. And so you can either buy into the noise, or you can create your own noise and then carve a path for yourself where people will be able to understand that what you're doing is has a different take, if you will, on what's already out there. And because there is no original ideas, as you and I both know, there's only our interpretation of what's been out there for years, right? So that's my thing, man. My whole vision and mission in life is to create, great content, to serve as many people as I can, and to get to people to wake up to who they truly are, so that they get to sculpt the masterpiece known as you.
I love that. And it's a process that we can anybody listening can certainly do. There's a lot of high achieving entrepreneurs and creatives listening in. And I think the important thing within this is really having the vision, that what you described with Michelangelo. He saw the sculpture underneath the thing, and it's one of the most important things to be able to energize us and tap us into it and actually motivate us to take those kinds of actions. I'm curious if you when was the inception or the discovery of sculpting your life, or did you have a moment where you decided to be a sculptor?
Well, it's interesting. Yeah, I call myself a personal discovery architect. An architect sculpt is a little bit the same, but a personal discovery architect. So, the whole idea for sculpting your life came about when I realized that the path I was going down in my life was not really getting me to stay in and step into my highest potential. So there was things that were happening in my life that obviously I was attracting, because I attract everything in my life, and so do you, and so does everybody listening. because we all have a frequency. So in my opinion, everything is about frequency. And so when you are living in your true frequency, which is unique to who you are, nobody has the frequency that you have, Kyle. Nobody has the frequency that I have. But once you live in the uniqueness of the frequency of who you are, then you begin to people, places, and things that are in that frequency, and that's how I met you, bro. I mean, I think I told you the story when I met you, I think it was 2 flight clubs ago, and we were in Vegas, and I've been in Flight Club 11 years, and I always look at the directory. That's one of the things that I do because I want to know who's in the room. Right. And I was reading the directory and I saw you and read about you and the guy, the story guy, and that whole thing that you do. And I said, I need to talk to this guy. And that was my mental note. And I know at one of the breaks, I think I came up to you and I said, hey, I'm introduced myself and blah, blah. And then I said, I told you that same story I just said. And we've now become fast friends and are certainly committed to supporting each other in every way possible. Yeah. So I would say, about maybe 15 years ago, I'd come out of, I was in the jingle business, Kyle, for many years, music for advertising, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of a fun thing. So I wrote this very famous jingle called Have You Driven a Ford Lately? And it was funny, yesterday I was at the gym and this guy came up and tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, I know you. I said, really? How? He said, well, we met on the Marketers Cruise, which is, Mike Fulsame's Marketers Cruise. He said, you're the guy that wrote Have You Driven a Ford Lately? And so I was like, kind of one of those kind of things. So about 15 years ago, I was transitioning, if you will, or transforming is probably a better word, out of the whole jingle music world, so to speak, and really, really going deep into my own personal discovery. When I first moved to California, I became part of a spiritual community called Agape, which is Reverend Michael Beckwith's church. Some of you might know who he is. He's in a secret, really powerful guy, and really kind of was one of my mentors in really forming the spiritual journey and the path that I was on, and being able to understand completely what that's about. I mean, I was raised as a Catholic. I'm not a practicing Catholic, but I know that Source, right? Source runs everything. So you can call it God, you can call it whatever you want. But I know that when I'm connected to Source, then I am more available. And I think that's an important part of most of us in life, is to be available for what's seeking you. And if you're in the right frequency, then what you seek begins to seek you. So about 15 years ago, I said, I need to really start to create a different pathway for my life. Getting out of the jingle business, and 2 things happened. The first was I met a guy named T. Harv Eker, who had a company called Peak Potentials. I don't know if you know him, Kyle.
Not personally.
So I met T. Harv at Agape. And he invited me to come to his Millionaire Mind Intensive, which was a 3-day course that he did live, where he taught people how to change their money blueprint. Because basically, again, how you think is how you'll be. So if you think you're poor, then guess what? Everything that you're going to do in your life is going to anchor that thought, because that's just how it works. But if you think you're abundant, then what happens is you think abundantly, and now you're looking for ways to be abundant. It's really not rocket science. So I sat there for 3 days, Kyle. I'd never been to anything like that in my life. Harv comes up to me after it, and he says, what'd you think? I said, Harv, you're an amazing teacher. I must tell you, your music sucks. Now, again, Kyle, I come from a marketing, music background. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, what do you mean my music sucks? I said, well, Harv, you seem to play every cliched money song out there to fit into your principles. Why don't you have your own song? He said, well, yeah, how would I do that? Now, nobody in the personal development world was doing that. They were all playing popular music to fit into their principles and not paying for it. I know this for a fact because I wasn't paid for a lot of music that I've written that people have used. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. I'm not upset. So he said, yeah, so how would I do that? I said, I'll write it for you. So I wrote him a song called I've Got a Millionaire Mind, because the course was called the Millionaire Mind Intensive. During the course, over the 3-day period, it must have been at least 100 times, he'd say, turn to your neighbor, give him a high five and say, I've got a millionaire mind. So I wrote a song called I've Got a Millionaire Mind, sang it live. my first foray now into, quote, the personal development world. He came up to me after the event and says, "Can you write songs for all my courses?" Because he saw the power of it. And I said, I use the only negotiating tactic that I use, Kyle, which is, if anybody wants to use this, it works. It was basically, Harv, listen, if the deal's right, I can do anything, right? And so we made a deal, and we sold one song, Kyle, the Millionaire Minded song, the I've Got a Millionaire Mind song, CD back then, wasn't digital yet, CD back then, for $7. We were partners, so I made 50-50. And then he said, "Okay, can you write songs for all my courses?" So I said, again, if the deal's right, I can do anything. So I've written 16 songs for him, and then one day I got a call from Jack Canfield. Then I got a call from Mark Victor Hansen. Then I got a call from Robert Allen and Brendan Burchard and Lisa Nichols and Chris and Janet and all these people in the personal development world asking me to write songs for them. So I said, geez, I must be onto something. So my next foray out of the jingle business was success songs. If anybody on the call wants to go to successsongs.com, please do. You'll have to give me your name and email, but you're going to get 2 songs, which I can guarantee you, if you listen to them every day, they're going to change your mind states, behaviors, and beliefs. They're that powerful. Okay. And then after that, I asked Harv about, I don't know, Kyle, like maybe 6 months later, I said, listen, I want to start speaking. He said, so yeah, what would you speak about? And we had a good relationship, Harv and I, still do. And I said, well, I'd like to talk about mind state, which is what I call mindset. So I believe your mind state of mind creates your mindset. So that's how I flip it, because I like to create my own way of talking about things. So these songs will change your mind state, behaviors, and beliefs. So when he asked me what would I speak about, I said I would talk about mind state, habits, and rituals. Okay, because I'm a big morning ritual guy. I'm big about morning rituals. So he said, great. So I started to speak on Harv stages. I started to get booked on other stages. I started to do podcasts. I started to do interviews. And I started to build this business, which I then called Sculpting Your Life. And then I got I met a guy we both know called Vision Lakiani, who owns Mind Valley. And Vision reached out to me because I was doing I have a course that's called Good Morning, Great Day, which is now being revised. It's a morning ritual course, but I write them every day. And he liked them so much, he wanted to use some of them. And I said, that'd be great. And then he got wind of this brain technology I have. So I take binaural beats, heartbeats, and breathing patterns. I put them together, and I call it multivariant resonant technology. And what it does is it activates the 4 holistic intelligences: spiritual, physical, mental, and emotional. Because when those are in alignment, then you're in your frequency. And so I ended up creating Mind Valley's meditation platform, okay, which was called Om Harmonics. That was his name. It was all my technology and all my music. And we ended up to this day having a little more than 3 million people download it. That's not buy it, but a lot of people did buy it. So then that got me even into more of a vertical or an avenue of more mind state stuff. And then I started to develop courses and methodologies designed to get you to get out of your own way. Now, of course, if you listen to a sculptation, it works in 9 different areas of life. You will get out of your own way. Okay, because I call it tuning in. So I don't call it meditation because, frankly, to be honest with you, maybe this will sound egotistical, but it's not. I don't call it meditation because everybody else does, right? So I call it tuning in. And to me, meditation's tuning in, right? And so I ended up doing that with Mind Valley, and then I ended up creating another course with Mind Valley called Day Sculpting, which was a 90-day program that teaches you how to create success one day at a time by actually focusing on the present moment. Because, and most of us, I can't speak for you, but most of us, I can speak for me, most of us, when we think about our life, we either think about, or our day, if you will, we either think about the past, what happened yesterday, which basically you should just learn the lesson from and then apply it, or tomorrow. So you're futurizing. Now, tomorrow's not even here. So in order to get the biggest impact and the greatest growth in life is, again, take the lesson from the past, and what you do today in your present moment is going to create your future. So if you think about it that way, you're never ahead of yourself. You're always in the moment. And you and I both know, because I know you practice in the moment, because you're a present guy. We're in the moment, man. This is all we have. The only thing I have in my life right now at 4:23 Pacific time on the 5th of August is a fantastic conversation I'm having with my friend Kyle Gray. That's it.
I'm
And
really
everything.
curious. Um, I'm really curious. You set up this story, um, kind of with a mind state. If you think you're poor, your life's going to anchor to that thought. And if you think abundantly, and then you started telling us about a transition that you made out of being you were in a jingle business in a certain way, but it sounded like you were serving more traditional things. And then you found a very unique and highly valuable way. And then doors started opening time after time, and new opportunities started presenting. Could you articulate the difference in what you were thinking like before this, and what thought changes happened to start moving you in the direction that you just described to us?
Absolutely. And thanks for the question. So I made a lot of money in the jingle business, man. I was one of the top 10 guys in the country, or people in the country, because there were some very, very good women jingle writers. I was one of the top 10 people in the country writing jingles, man. I would get called on every big pitch that every agency would do. I didn't win them all, but I'd get called on them. And I made a lot of money in the jingle business. But the problem that I had then in the jingle business was all that money went to an addiction I had for cocaine. I was introduced to cocaine, right? And I liked it, bro. And so I ended up having a very severe cocaine problem. For about 12 years, which finally caught up to me, okay, in 1988. And they put me in a straitjacket and sent me to the 14th floor psych ward of St. Vincent's Hospital. So that was what I call a defining moment, because I look at life as defining moments. Having this conversation with you is a defining moment in my life. So once I got out of the rehab that I was in after I went to the psych ward for a 14-day detox, I realized that I shifted, bro. My whole consciousness shifted. My whole state of mind shifted about understanding that, you know what? I've been going down a path that is kind of taking me down to very dark places in my life. And now I had to look at why I was doing that. And I'll tell you, the reason I was doing that, frankly, and for everybody that's listening, is I felt unworthy. Okay. To be totally transparent, I felt unworthy, and I felt that I was a fraud. Now, I'm a self-taught musician. I got a recording studio in my house back there. I'm a really great composer, producer. I play enough to be dangerous, okay? Play keyboard enough to be dangerous. But I was, I would write these jingles and then go into the studio, and the people who would play my jingles would be consummate musicians. So if everybody remembers the David Letterman show, everybody on the David Letterman band was a session player in New York City, as were a lot of other good musicians. And every now and then I'd be able to get Paul Schaefer to be playing piano, Will Lee to be playing bass. But I would be in the room with all these guys who were unbelievable musicians. And I would sit there with them, and I'd play my thing, clumsily, if you will. They obviously would get it. And I would always say to myself, geez, they must think I'm a real fraud, because I wasn't a schooled musician. Now, that was really some very funky thinking, if you will, but that's what I thought. But until I realized, after I went through my straitjacket episode, till I realized, you know what, man, that's not true about you, Paul. Because what's true about you, Paul, is you've been highly successful. You have the goods to prove it. You have the social proof to prove it. And you're just making up a story about yourself that's not true, which is where I came into this concept of creating these 10, what I call mind traps, MINDTRAPS, which is my version of limiting beliefs. And we all have them. Scarcity, procrastination, distractions and diversions, lack of confidence, resistance to change, fear of failure, not taking responsibility, not holding yourself accountable, lack of commitment. I am unlovable, and I am unworthy, or I am not enough. And so I've now based all my Sculpting Your Life work on that. So when I made this transition out of and this mind state of deceiving myself and trying to convince myself I was worthless, if you will, even though, Kyle, on the outside, man, I had it all, bro. Okay, I had it all. I had the nice house. I had the nice car. Not that that matters. I mean, I had a lot of money. People were always, were falling over to work with me. I mean, all that stuff that I felt I would never get when I was feeling unworthy. But now that I got it, I said, geez, man, I don't want that either. What I want to do is I want to create something where I get to share my experience, my strength, and what I've been through to help people get out of the way of what they want to create in their life, and then help them do that by helping them architect it. And that's where I came up with the whole personal discovery thing, because for me, I can only speak for me, the whole idea of being able to discover what it is that you want to develop in your life is very powerful. Because a lot of people tell you they don't know what they want.
Yeah.
And I know that's a problem some people have. So that's kind of how I ended up getting to do what I do. And again, Kyle, it's all trial and error. I fall down, I make mistakes. And my good friend Les Brown would always say to me, "Oh, he's always, that's how he talks, He said, Paul, if you fall down, make sure you fall down on your back so you're looking up."
Yeah.
And all that kind of stuff, man. So that's kind of where I ended up getting into really shifting gears in my life and really being dedicated, right, to developing courses and programs and ideas and tools and strategies that are designed to help you sculpt your life. Okay, you can be the artist of your life, you can call it whatever you want, but you can get to sculpt your life the way you want it, so that every day when you wake up, you're doing everything that's necessary to having and living what I call the epic ideal life you desire and deserve.
Paul, important question. What was happening? So people came and they put you in a straitjacket. What were you doing the 6 hours before that happened?
I wasn't doing the green juice, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
What I was doing the 6 hours before that is I wasn't working anymore, Kyle. I was living in the West Village in New York. My phone stopped ringing in the jingle business. My phone stopped ringing because nobody wanted to work with me anymore because I was an asshole.
Mm-hmm.
And I own that. And so what I was doing was what I did every day. I got up in the morning, phone's not ringing, there is no work. I still own the studio on 23rd Street. There's no point going to it. But went to my dealer and got cocaine, went to the liquor store and got vodka. And that's what I did all day. Snort, blow, and drink vodka until I had a psychotic reaction. So that's what I did for the 6 hours before. I was in, if you've ever heard of the DTs, the delirium tremens, that's what happens when you're addicted to alcohol. Mm-hmm. So I was very, very sick. But that's what I was doing. So I ended up, on that day, November 14th, 1988, I was doing what I just told you. My mother-in-law was in town. I was married, living in the West Village. They went out. My wife and my mother-in-law went out to shop. And then all day, I just snorted, blow, and drank. And then all of a sudden, I woke up from a blackout, and I looked across my living room. So I was on the couch. And at my dining room table was a man with no legs. And he was talking to me. Now, this is a hallucination, but I'm having a conversation with him, right? And we're having a conversation back and forth and whatever. And then I look at my watch and I go, oh, my God, I got to get you out of here because my wife and mother-in-law are coming in. He said, yeah, how am I going to get out of here? I have no legs. I said, well, that's a good point. So knowing how creative I am and how my imagination works, I looked around the apartment. I saw that our bikes, my wife and my bikes, were in the hallway. I said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to a hardware store. I'm going to buy some chains and fasteners, seat and erector set and pedals. I'm going to build something, put it on the bike, give you the bike, put you in it, and see you later. What do you think? Because I had, hand pedals, if you will. He said, that's a great idea. So I bolted out of the apartment, dressed in shorts and a t-shirt, freezing cold, pouring rain, ran through traffic, ran 14 blocks, found a hardware store. I do not know how I did. Bought all these chains and fasteners, came back to the apartment, laid them out on the floor. I'm pretty organized. Laid them out on the floor, nuts and screws and eye bars and the pedal and the seat and so forth. And then I didn't have any tools, so I did the next thing I knew. I just ransacked the apartment and found some tools. So the apartment looked like it was like destroyed. Sat down and started to build this thing. And my wife and mother-in-law walked in and asked me what I was doing.
Wow.
I told them I was trying to get this guy out. They said, "What guy?" I said, "Well, that guy." They didn't see him, of course. And then we called a friend. They called a friend of ours under the guise that they would take me to the emergency room. And when we got to the emergency room, we'd have them come back and get the guy out of the apartment. So we got to the emergency room. Obviously, they're not going to go back and get the guy. They're concerned about me. They think I'm either going to have a heart attack or a seizure because I'm very, 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 very distressed. So finally, they asked me if they could take my blood pressure. And I said, "Yeah, you can take my blood pressure." And then I was fighting them. And finally, they just said, "This guy, we got to do something to this guy." So they put me in a straitjacket, took me to the 14th floor psych ward of St. Vincent's Hospital, and shot me up with Thorazine to calm me down and help me so I don't get a seizure. And then I remember that night I put my head on the pillow in the ward and I said, "Thank you, God, I don't have to do that anymore." And I was clear about that was no longer going to be part of my life. What's going to happen now is I'm going to really get myself together, get healthy, and move into a different paradigm and path for what I'm doing. And that's what happened.
Lovely. Tell me about a specific moment somewhere along this. You mentioned like, "Oh, well, can you write this for me? Can you write this for me?" What was a moment where you recognized the power of this process and saw it played out in your life? And maybe you said, "Thank you, God," again. I can't believe we're here.
Yeah, well, I thank God every day and that I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in my morning, I'll answer this question and say, in my morning ritual, Kyle, the first thing I do is pray. So I say, "Thank you, God, for this new day and for this new opportunity to create whatever that is you would like me to do." So that's how I start my day. And because we all wake up with a blank canvas that we get to paint any way we want. So I would just, I was very fortunate to be able to, get people to ask me to write stuff for them. So it even transcends not just the music stuff, but even just the programs that I'm writing, or the kinds of things that I do, or the processes that I come up with. So every day I'm working on myself and working on something that I believe is going to help change somebody's life. And if I change one life, bro, I'm thrilled. I'm probably like you. Every time I get a email or a text from somebody who says how much I've changed their life, I mean, that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. And so, again, writing a song for Jack Canfield. So, I knew Mark Victor Hansen. Jack Canfield and Mark Victor Hansen have sold 1 billion books.
Mm-hmm.
Chicken Soup for the Soul, right? So I remember when Jack called me up and said, "Hey, I heard Harbecker got a song. How do I get one?" And I said, "Well, let's talk." And I wrote him a song. It's called "Breakthrough to Success," for his Breakthrough to Success events. I remember after writing him that song and him calling me up and holding the phone up, and everybody in the office is screaming and yelling about how much they loved it and how they're all dancing to it. And that's one of those thank you, God moments, Or when I have when somebody like a teacher will ask me if they can use one of my songs for their class. Or somebody has used one of my sculptation brain technology experiences, and how that's taken them out of a feeling of suicide to a feeling of looking forward to the next day ahead. And so anytime anything like that happens, of course, man, my first thing is thank you, God. Because I'm not doing this alone, man.
Mm-hmm. All right, Paul, would you like to hear your story?
Sure, bro.
They're going to think I'm a fraud. This was a record on repeat in my own head. I was the best, one of the best in the world, best in the country at creating jingles. I remember being paid well, living a good life, having the car, having the house, having everything that seems like success is advertised to be. And still, when great musicians and session musicians would come to my house to play the songs that I had written, I was afraid that because I was not a trained musician, they would discover I was a fraud. I was afraid every time one of my songs was played that somebody might just think that through. And I tried to hide from this feeling in many different ways. As my business and fame accelerated in this place, I began to numb myself with cocaine and alcohol. And through the process of carrying this pain and hiding this pain, in a lot of ways, I became an asshole and started to push away the people that were helping me, that were creating this abundance. And I could remember one day, a day totally open with no business, no things, and just sitting there left to my own devices, the powders and the drinks that were the constant hiding from this fear, I'm not worthy. And the next time waking up in a straitjacket, having a psychotic breakdown because of the substances that I was constantly using and the way I was constantly berating my own mind. Despite myself, despite having the financial success and all of the other things that seemed like a perfect life, without figuring this out, it didn't matter. And I remember laying down on the pillow in the psych ward that night and saying to myself, thank you, God. I don't have to do that anymore. And I began to lay a foundation for creating a life that was in alignment with me. I wanted a way to wake up every morning, tuning into and knowing what was most important to me, feeling gratitude and excitement for this day, and carrying that energy into anything or everything that I would do for that day. I wanted a way to change that record in my mind from I'm not worthy to I am so grateful to be here, and slowly began putting this practice into place. I can remember in my quest of looking all of the ways to overcome the limiting beliefs and mind traps that I had set in my own life, that I started to invest in personal development. And I started getting invitations to write jingles again, not for things like selling trucks or Coca-Cola, but for selling meaningful, powerful experiences, the same things that were starting to transform my life. And I began to feel and say to myself, I am abundant. With each one of these opportunities, new people, big names who were changing the world and changing people's lives were coming to me, not just for my talent in music, but for my care and my passion for creating better lives for people. And I can remember one day seeing, I think this was T.R. Becker, forgive me for crossing the names, holding up a phone, playing the song that I had wrote for him, full of an office of people screaming how much they love it, how they're dancing to it.
Jack Canfield.
Jack Canfield. And delighting in how many lives that they were going to impact for this. And I can remember again in that moment taking a pause and saying, thank you, God. I'm so excited to be here. And I realized in that moment that the ups and downs, the challenges, and the process that I had built to pull myself out of this and pull myself back into alignment could help so many more people, could help people sculpt their lives every single day into the masterpiece that they know is possible, but maybe aren't believing that they can get there. And that's what I'm here to teach you about today.
Well, all I can say is, man, you got it.
Thank you.
Amazing. It's amazing the gift that you have, and I'm so appreciative of being able to experience that gift, bro.
Thank you. Yeah.
Because I know that you and I are in the same frequency about the outcome that we are desiring to design for people, and that is to get them on the path for their ultimate and to live their epic ideal life. I know that you and I both are onto that. So thank you for that. I love it. You're a master, my friend.
Thank you, Paul. It's been an honor. Do you have any closing thoughts for us today? And where can we go to learn more about the self-sculpting process?
So you can go to Sculpting Your Life, SculptingYourlife, sculptingyourlife.com, and you can learn more about me and all my stuff, all my programs and so forth. And there's obviously some things you can get as a gift. But you know, I am a marketer, and I'm not here to sell you anything, but I am a marketer, and you know, following good marketing tactics, you know, it's obviously, you know, email is important. So you have to put your name and email in. So that would be great for you to do that. The other thing is, I always do this, Kyle, and people think I'm crazy. But Kyle, you know what? I am crazy, and I own it and love it, bro. I love it. I love the Paul crazy. So here's my cell phone number, ladies and gentlemen: 323-810-5588. Here's my personal email: Paul Hoffman, Hoffman, the number 24 @gmail.com. Now, I give you those two things because there's probably somebody on this call that's watching us and listening to us and might have a question for me. Or there's somebody that might want me to help them in some challenge that they have. Not trying to sell you anything, but just to be of service, if you will. And so rather than having to search around and how do you get in touch with this guy or whatever, I just gave you the two things that you can get in touch with me with. If you text me or call me and leave a message, say, hey, listen, I heard you on Kyle Gray's podcast. If you email me, put that in the subject line. I am here to serve. I'm here because I know what was necessary for me to get past all the stuff that I put in as obstacles in my way, mind traps in my way. So please feel free to do that. You're not going to bother me. A lot of people won't do it, Kyle, because they think that, oh my God, you know, he's never going to answer the phone, or I don't want to bother him, or whatever. That's old way of thinking. Okay. If you want to talk to me, if you need any assistance with anything, you have the two ways that you will get to me personally and quickly. And I encourage you to use it if you so choose to.
Amazing, Paul. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Story Engine podcast.
Thank you, Kyle. I appreciate you, brother.